meager wages then to pay for those shares. That made me a shareholder, one of the early shareholders of the St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank.
Mm-hmm. Rich?
I've known Sir Ed for over 30 years. I first worked with him as a board director in 1995 when he became managing director of St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank, and I joined the board as a director. We developed a friendship over the years, professional friendship, and then later on we were even closer over the years. So my first interaction with him was really as a director on National Bank board, and he being the managing director, and he piloted that bank through the years that it became a financial cornerstone in the OECS.
But how would you describe Sir Edmund?
I describe him as a quiet, easygoing, look timid, speak softly, slowly, a great thinker, never late, always on time, and a pioneer, a visionary, and someone who you can depend on for wise counsel, someone you can depend on when there's a situation for him to come up with a solution, or when there's a challenge, someone who can rise to the level, okay, and keep the ship of state afloat.
I concur with much of what Mitch said, but also you can always expect from him something that you can learn from whenever he makes a contribution. Very knowledgeable, but sturdy, you know, in his decision and his actions as managing director of the bank.
And does that extend also to his personal life as well, too, in terms of personal opinions and advice that he would have shared to persons? Of course, you referred to the fact that he would advise you in terms of getting shares at National Bank back in the day, but also on a personal level. Is that something that you could depend on him for?
Of course, generally in life, expectations, as a guide, a senior person who, you know, who can give wise counsel to young people.
What would you say were the driving principles behind Sir Edmund? Mitch described him as someone who's a pioneer and a great visionary. What were the driving principles behind the man, and what mattered most to him, and how did it evolve in the different phases of his life that he undertook? And we can start there.
Well, it is clear that being away for some time and studies, he came back with a mission, a purpose to contribute to the country and put his knowledge into practice. And so he had that drive of wanting to set up the St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank.
So Ed is one of the early persons, along with the late Washington Archibald, who were given an opportunity to go and further their study abroad, coming out of adult suffrage. They were I'm told they were one of the early batch of persons who went abroad to study. And so Ed came back equipped with the knowledge, and he made a tremendous difference in the lives of the persons in St. Kitts and Nevis, because he started a bank from his knowledge, okay? But he had that vision where he wanted to see St. Kitts go, okay? His motivation and drive was like the philosopher that say, a high tide raises all boats. So if you feel like if he can get into the financial, because bear in mind, back then in those early days, a lot of persons were not bankable. Okay, you had the big foreign banks. And so he had that vision. How do we get these people to become bankable? okay? And then he pioneered, he persevered with the help of the assistance from person he knew, and he persevered, and then he built a financial powerhouse, the National Bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to talk a bit more about his contributions to finance and banking a bit later in the show, but I want to go back to something that was said earlier in terms of he was one of the first, including the Washington Archibald as well, to go off and study in the overseas, that's in the United Kingdom that he went to in England. That was a big deal back then because, of course, there were limited education opportunities here in St. Kitts and Nevis for persons of black color to rise above.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yes, and that was an opportunity for them to go abroad, study, and come back and make a contribution to their country of birth.
And most persons may not know this, but Mr. Lawrence came from very humble beginnings as a young boy. He grew up in the neighborhood, I think you mentioned it was in Newtown Ambassador?
As far as I recall, I think I remember his father used to be like what you call a tally clerk at the port.
Oh, okay.
For shippers. Good. That's my recollection of his father.
And I also mentioned
humble
that,
man. Yeah.
right, that before he left St. Kitts and Nevis to go to England to study, that he also was a teacher, and I suppose that might have been because there were very few limited opportunities for persons to get involved in a profession here in St. Kitts and Nevis at the time.
I didn't know him at that time. As I said, my recollection was when he came back from the United Kingdom with his family. Good. I was a young boy in school,
right.
So I didn't know much of him at that time. I didn't know anything about him at that time.
Right. Okay. Well, most persons know.
Your point is well taken because if you look back at the history, you can clearly see that then at that time, the main source of employment was the sugar factory. And you leave school, depends on your grades, you might get a teaching job, or you might get a job in one of the hardware stores, the Lasada, then evolve into TDC and the hospitals and so. But the bulk of the school leavers were going to the sugar factory, the law and trade and stuff like that. And he went into teaching. And from that, from there he went on to further his education.
Which really, I think, drove home the point of education to him because, of course, being one who was excelling in school, I think it was important to give back to persons who are younger than him, those who may not have had that same opportunity, so that they too, as you mentioned, a rising tide raises all ships.
Precisely.
Okay.
Well, and you can see later on when you deal with his family, you can see that all of his children really went on to higher education. He instilled that early beginnings which he had in them.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that now, because of course you mentioned that you didn't really know much about him before he left to go to the UK. But most persons who know of Sir Ed, they know of Lady Lawrence, Lady Huldah Lawrence, of course. How would you describe, and Mitch, of course, you were close to the family as well. We could probably start with you. How would you describe his relationship with Lady Huldah?
They were like peas in a pot. They were like two peas in a pot. Okay? You go to a function, Sir Ed and Lady Lawrence. Okay? I'm a Methodist. Sir Ed was a fervent Methodist. And he did tremendous work in the Methodist Church. His wife, Lady Huldah, she was very active in his church. She and all her children, they are musicians. Okay? Sir Ed himself, he boasts that he is not a novice also. I think he used to play something in some instrument. And so you find that his drive, early o'clock, he influenced his children to ensure that they get a sound educational footing. And so he invests in his children. But the family life was there. It's a very prominent family in St. Kitts. His wife went on to teach several persons, thousands of persons, music. And so they became a very prominent family. Not only was he a figure in banking, but also in the life of the Methodist Church, the Lawrences played an active part. You have and even in the Christian society in St. Kitts, because one daughter plays in the Anglican Church. We have his wife, Lady Holly, used to be at Methodist. She plays somewhere else, and the children them that are living here, they make the contribution, and they make sure that they play at church every Sunday. Not necessarily Methodist Church. I think one of them go as far as
Trinity and St. Peter's Anglican
and
Church.
down in St. Paul, the little church in Newton, a little church there between Newton and St. Paul's. So you see that there, you could see how him and his wife influence rub off on the children. Yeah, shape the future.
Well, Mrs. Lawrence, I knew her closer with teaching music at her home. My daughter was one of her students at the time, right? And preparing her for the annual music exhibition which she have from different churches, right? And supporting different organizations with the proceeds from the church functions, the pianoforte functions, so that she was known to be one who contributed to the society, and who, although was a strong family person, as Mitch referred to, her contribution went way beyond just the family itself to the society, different groups, the children home and other adult groups within the society, by her contribution from her talents and teaching efforts with the young people in St. Kitts and Nevis.
So it really is a reflection of the statement that behind every strong man is a strong woman.
Precisely. The anchor. Behind every strong man is the anchor. Okay? The anchor holds.
Right, okay. So you touched on his relationship with his children as well, too, but let me ask, in terms of course, being someone who was so involved in so many things in St. Kitts and Nevis as it relates to trying to build a bank from the ground up, the type of responsibilities, and how did he balance that responsibility to his family and his children, of course, his wife, compared to his professional life? How did he balance that?
Well, a lot of his time really was spent within the banking institution, but I suppose that he still spent time with his family, and they understood that his passion for what he's doing, would take quite a bit of his time daily. Because many times the meetings went up to, when I was on the bank board, after 10, 11 o'clock, and back again at morning, 8 o'clock at mornings to open the bank,
And I could only add that he balances time by, when he's away from the bank, being home with his family and spending time with his family. He spoke to me about playing games with them and stuff like that. He liked to play board games and Scrabble and stuff like that. And also, on Sundays, he's in church, him and Lady Lawrence, with the children. So it was a close-knit family. So even though he's away from the bank, most days, whenever he's home, the family is locked in. And so they grow to appreciate that as well. Because he was out there building something that became a tremendous success later on in life.
And Ambassador, during our pre-discussion, you mentioned, of course, that as Mitch referred to board games, that Sir Edmund also liked games as well, too. Because it's a question I had.
Yes.
What does someone like Sir Edmund, a prominent son of the soil, what does he do to unwind? Especially in the day when there was no internet, there was no, a lot of distractions, I think one would call them. What did he do?
Draft, and he plays dominoes. Good. I could recall him in Central Street in the Stanley building opposite their business. Euclid used to
College Street
opposite
and Central Street.
There was a building in which Mr. Halbert, who was had a bookstore there, that building, and after a while, maybe through Euclid, he encouraged fellows to come there and play dominoes and draft. And many times Mr. Lawrence would spend some time there unwinding, playing draft. And then I knew him playing with the former Governor General, Dr. Sebastian, next to his property on Borden Street. He would go there with Mr. Prokop, and they would play draft until he leaves and serve his customers in his medical office.
And I imagine with him being so good at numbers, he must have been unbeatable in dominoes.
Yes. I remember sometimes on picnics, when the Union or the Labour Party have picnics over at Black Rock, he would play dominoes join the table and play dominoes, unwind, from, his other business activities.
Right. Okay. And Mitch, if I could just go back as well to something that you touched on earlier in terms of him being a Methodist, his faith. How would you say his faith helped to shape his character and his actions?
His faith, his belief, in the Bible and Christianity helped to propel him to life, because whenever a challenge he faced, he always say he go back to that good old book, and he read that book and he get inspiration. So I knew he was a man of faith and strong conviction as well, and that is why he did so much for the Methodist Church, because he wanted to ensure that the church go from strength to strength, and he continued to build the fellowship. But Mr. Lawrence had another side to him too. He was a very sociable person, and for the 30 years I knew him, he liked to socialize. He was in the Rotary Club, and whenever Rotary Club got a function, he down at the Frigate Bellon, and he's making hot dog and grilling chicken and stuff like that. He liked that kind of hands-on approach. He likes to socialize. So even though he was the driving force behind the National Bank, yet he was an ordinary person, and he was very approachable.
Okay.
Speaking about his religion, very often on dealing with matters at the board level, he would quote scriptures. Sometimes we pray, and he would be quoting scriptures from the Bible. So he, that was very close to him.
Yeah, and what impact did that have on the board and the decision making and the deliberations that he had to make?
Well, of course, we very often, we didn't always agree on everything, but the meetings were very, cordial, and affable, and we come up with the solutions that help to project the bank and move the bank forward.
And Mitch, I imagine having that faith also would have helped to ground the decisions, because of course you have to be honest with people's money. You have to have a heart to serve people as well too.
Just say you start the meeting with a prayer, and that prayer is supposed to govern the conduct of the meeting. People have different of opinion, but they're cordial and they're respectful. And at the end of the day, our focus was to grow the bank, grow the institution, look after the staff, and protect the depositors' money and the shareholders' investment. He always used to tell us that unlike public company, trading companies, the TDC and the hospitals where they got stock and you do inventory once a year, the bank has no inventory. You bring your money into the bank for safekeeping, the bank in turn lend out part of that money to bring in more money to advance.
Right. Okay. And so we'll get into that conversation about St. Kitts and Nevis, Anguilla National Bank, and where it came from, the origins of that bank. But first, we're going to take a quick break. So stay right there, gentlemen, and viewers and listeners. We'll be right back with more In Focus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Thanks for staying with us, and welcome back to In Focus. We're having a discussion, reflections on the legacy and the life of Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence, of course, who was the third Governor General here in St. Kitts and Nevis. All right, so gentlemen, we touched on it several times. It's hard to speak about Sir Edmund without referring to his major contributions in banking and financing here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we can probably start right there in terms of the origins. After he came back from England, he got into, with his degree in economics, he got into the field, and he teamed up with, as you mentioned earlier, Mr. Bridgewater. Tell us a bit about what was it called back then, the St. Kitts Industrial Bank, but its nickname, most persons call it, Ambassador, as you mentioned, the Penny Bank.
Penny Bank, yes. And then it went on to be the Industrial Bank, which is the forerunner to the St. Kitts Nevis and Anguilla National Bank. That office, banking office, was located at the corner of Lower Market Street and Central Street, in a wooden building there. And that there, it was from there that the launch of shares for the St. Kitts Nevis and Anguilla National Bank started. That is where people went to pay for shares.
But before we get to National Bank, I want to focus on the Penny Bank, because it says, the Industrial Bank, it says that the motto was saving for a rainy day. How important, I mean, you could probably jump in here as well as someone who's involved in that. How important was it to have that novel concept for persons who really didn't earn much back then?
It was very fitting, because those days the wages were very small. But Mr. Lawrence's philosophy was that you have small wages, but you have to start somewhere. Okay? The longest journey starts with the first step. So the first step, let us start to save for a rainy day. So you get a wage, you put aside something. Okay? And not only that, it's an investment. So he was teaching the nation, St. Kitts and Nevis, how to be prudent in money management and how to look in terms of investing down the road. Because Ambassador Walford spoke about buying 100 shares while he was at the sugar factory many moons ago. But if he would be honest and tell us today, that 100 shares that he bought many moons ago, that has multiplied 10 times. Okay? And so he was teaching you money management without even you knew what he was teaching you. Okay? Because that was the depth of his interaction and his intelligence in terms of finance and money management. And so you take those persons who, they couldn't go into the banks at that time, the foreign banks operating here, and you start to turn them into good persons in terms of investment, saving for a rainy day, putting aside something, and later on, those same persons, children and grandchildren, were able to go on to university because of the rainy day philosophy.
And Ambassador, in terms of course, you mentioned earlier that he taught you accounting in a way that would also help persons to understand a bit more about financing and how everything works, dealing with numbers. Did that play a part in you being able to invest, making that decision to invest?
Yes, of course, that relationship with him. Good. And then later on, while I was working at the Trades and Labor Union office, I was asked to go to what was our first garment factory, Sun Island Close, which is Sun Island Close on the Newtown Bay Road, to then handle the accounting there for that industry, that factory, first garment factory in St. Kitts. Then we were shipping the garments to England. Good. Started before Kopalani took over the factory. So that initial training which I had from Mr. Lawrence assisted me not only in investing in buying shares in National Bank, but also in my work at Massey's House, which I later returned and took charge of as executive officer, and then in a wider scale to help the society, then the government, then the country, then in setting up its first garment factory in the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site, which later became the C.A.P. Southwell Industrial Site, first garment factory there. Right? And then I ended up for a period of time virtually managing the factory, because it changed hands for a period, over the period of time.
Right.
Right?
And so, was it a difficult sell to get persons to buy shares? Because of course they didn't necessarily have the background, the experience that you had.
Not really, but for people like me, it would be small shares, small numbers, and that is why I suppose the government then invested the majority of shareholding in the bank, because the bank on its own probably would not have been able to garner from people with small wages, the sort of investment to start the capital to start the bank, in any big way. Move away from the penny bank to a bank that could compete with the foreign banks, Royal Bank, Barclays Bank at the time.
Mitch, tell us about that legacy of the bank, because of course as someone who works there currently, of course you you appreciate that history of where the bank came from. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, because when I joined, when I became a director in 1995, there was a lady, Ruben Odein. She was an employee of the National Bank then. When it started, Mr. Lawrence told us, gave us a story. And she eventually became the first female chairperson for the same institution, many moons after. And so one would have to appreciate his foresight that he groomed her. Another person who started there too, Analdo Bailey, and he became strong in the banking industry. And so those persons started with him with the industrial bank. And then later on, one joined the staff of National Bank, one came back later on as the chairperson. So you can see, he was building the legacy from early o'clock, even without they realizing. Okay? And then the rest is a success story from back when 1995, when he went back to the bank in 1995. The total assets were $367 million, under half a billion. And when he left the bank at the end of 2012, the bank assets stood at that point 2.7 billion with a B. So you could, over the years, the bank has grown by leaps and bounds. He on his own couldn't do it. The staff, you have to applaud the staff, and persons come to my mind like Jimmy Pistana, who was very instrumental. Then we had Mr. Lance in credit, okay? A number of persons were in IT, okay? I don't want to call him own name for run the risk, okay? But what I'm saying is that the staff complement the vision. They bought into the vision, and the board also bought into the vision. Mr. Lawrence always said that he wanted to grow this bank into $1 billion institution. And he achieved it before he went on to become governor general.
But he also wanted to, of course, empower individuals. I think, as you mentioned during a previous discussion, Ambassador, you mentioned that the bank was known as the Little People Bank. those persons who are not wealthy, those persons who basically ordinary man and woman on the street, as we call them. So how would you say that his policies help to shape the bank's decisions to empower individuals, which would include vendors and small businesses as well too? So eyes of you.
Those persons who were not bankable, he made them bankable. And then when they became bankable, they now are able to extend the dwelling house.
Explain what you mean bankable, but those who were not bankable,
Okay.
for someone
Those
who may not
persons
understand.
who sell in the tray at the side of the street, guy who cutting grass, okay, the fisher folk, okay, the person doing farming, they can go into the foreign bank, okay,
And get a loan.
and get a loan or even open an account. So what Mr. Lawrence did, he created the environment so those persons can come, buy shares in National Bank and become a part of the success story. And if they didn't want to buy shares later on, they went and they put the little 2 pence in the bank. When they finish selling the tray, they put the money there, they save it for a rainy day. And so when the rainy day comes, the rainy day might be they want to expand the dwelling house. Then they go and get a loan. Remember, you know, National Bank was known as the poor man bank. And that is the perception throughout the years. So the little man on the street, you go to National Bank, they take care of you there. And so that is something that the vision he had. And so people buy into the vision. And that is why it became a success story. And again, the government at the day bought 55% shares, or over 50% shares in the institution. So that propelled it as well. But you cannot discredit the vision, the man who had the vision that he gonna move. He floats all the boats. Okay, without you knowing that is his intention.
Yes, sir?
Well, the small man was able from then to see himself being able to go to an institution where he can get a loan to buy a bit of land, to build a small home and then expand on it. The business people, the small people with the tray and so forth, were able to get some loans where they can expand their business. Some of them went into their own personal shop, small shops and so forth, and expanded. And so the economy of the country began to move because small people now see themselves aligned to a financial institution which can assist them.
Right. Of course, and the contributions also would have extended as we speak about persons being able to get loans and to expand their own portfolio. The National Bank also expanded as well too, and it had a group of companies involved in trust, insurance, and mortgage. Tell us a bit about that evolution.
Well, the evolution started before I joined the bank, but I think it was Denzel Cook, if I'm not mistaken. He might have been one of the first manager there for the national insurance. So Mr. Lawrence had the vision.
Roy Jones.
Eh?
Roy Jones.
Roy Jones, okay, sorry, if I'm corrected. And he had that vision. And so they introduced an insurance company. Because you're a financial institution, there are some risks that involve. And then you have to go and you have to sell that risk. So you need somebody to buy the risk. So the best thing to do, you have an insurance company. And so they have risk appetite, and so they manage the risk. So you keep it in-house. And then later on, you have the mortgage company. So it was the vision he had, how you're going to grow, because you could grow the bank to that level, but also in growing the bank, there are things that you have to do to keep the bank sound, and the insurance ties in well, and the mortgage company. And so, because he told us at the board meeting that National Bank started the housing revolution in St. Kitts many years ago. I didn't know. I have a friend in Boardwalk, Peter Douglas. He told me he bought a house in 1974 for $25,000 from Jenkins Construction. A young police officer, he said he never paid rent yet. He got married. He got a 2-bedroom house, $25,000. Of course, over the years, he had expanded it and, create more space. It was on 4,000 square feet of land. Now the house is marketed for over $500,000. But imagine that in 1974, National Bank create the environment that Jenkins Construction could go and they get a facility. They purchase the land from government, Boardwalk, place up the section, they call it Suncrest. And you could go and you pay $25,000 then, and you get a 2-bedroom house. And that 1974, and now the 2-bedroom house withstand the test. All the hurricane and everything is there, it's expanded, you see, and that is how you help to move your people. You help to move the population. You make them more dependent. So rather than depending on people and you're paying house rent, you become now a home owner. And your children will develop that philosophy. And later on in life, they go along the same route. So imagine he hadn't had that foresight to introduce that and create the facility, the financial gateway for that housing development. My friend here, he told me he was a part of it.
Yeah, my ex-wife and I, as partners, we paid $20,000, signed the contract at New Street, where Jenkins and Byron office was, for a property in Suncrest. 1 year later, when the oil crisis in 1973, I think it was, came in on the world crisis, good? Anybody who wanted a similar housing arrangement paid $30,000. So it went up by 50% of what I paid in 1 year, just because of the crisis. So we were lucky that we didn't sign at that time. Today we have a 3-4 bedroom house with an apartment attached behind. The value, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right. Started just from that simple opportunity to own something as a young people,
And the thing about it is,
and look at the project now. You look at Suncrest,
right? Yeah. And of course, they would have assisted also in terms of the Carifesta housing as well. And that's important because, of course, when you empower a young person or someone in the community who, as we say, we'll use the term, not necessarily bankable. When you empower persons to get a house or to get a car or to start a small business, it helps to inspire other persons within that category to say, well, I can do that too. I have that opportunity to do that, and I can do that through the financial gateway, as mentioned, that was provided to the bank. And that was a part of his vision of helping to serve others.
Mitch will tell you, you made mention of the Carifesta houses. Carifesta was in what, 2000? Carifesta
yes.
was in 2000.
Right.
Good, we were on the bank board then. Good, because we both went on the bank board at 95 when the change of government, and we were there. And look at those houses which was sold to.
You can identify them now. You can identify them.
Look at where they started, and look at how people expanded on them now, and look at the housing development in the country.
But that is how
what happened there. You can see all over St. Kitts Exchange.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how you empower your people, through education, through opportunity, through housing, and that is how you assist in empowering the population.
And his contributions were not just on a local level that relates to financing. He often was called upon to assist in regional matters as well too.
Well, I could give you a story. I could give you a story. Many years ago, a bank in Antigua failed, a BIB, and the governor, then of the central bank, late Sir Dwight Venner, called on Sir Ed, because him and Sir Ed, they were very close, and he always referred to Sir Ed as the wise one. And he called on Sir Ed, and Sir Ed put his skill to the test, and from the advice to the central bank, a new creature was formed in Antigua, a bank called ECAB, Eastern Caribbean Amalgamated Banks, and that grew from the old ABIB. And that is still alive and well today. National Bank is a shareholder, the Bank of Dominica is a shareholder, the Bank of St. Lucia, National Bank of St. Lucia is a shareholder, and the other shareholder is the government of Antigua. And that is paying dividend. National Bank gets a return on the investment. It goes to the bottom line. So when you look at the accounts for National Bank, you could see investment and what investment is bringing in on an annual basis. But moreover, you had to save the depositors' funds. And so Central Bank is the regulator. They went in. But Sir Dwight believed very much in Sir Ed. And so he asked him to come partner it. Let us put our heads together and come up with a solution. And that is how the new creature was created. I had the opportunity to travel with him to various banking conferences abroad. We used to have this regional banking conference every year. Yeah. They called it CAB, Caribbean Association of Banks. Okay.
Of indigenous banks.
It used to be CAIB, but then they take out the I.
Oh, okay.
It used to be Caribbean Association of Indigenous Banks. And they felt that indigenous was not a good word. Okay, so they took out the indigenous. And so Caribbean Association of Banks. And so Ed go to this forum, and he's always referred to as the wise one. He speaks slowly, okay, but he makes sense. And so there's always an appetite to hear from the St. Kitts National Bank Managing Director.
Okay, we can go on and on about so many stories about Sir Edmund.
Oh, yes, he was well known throughout the region.
Yes, but unfortunately the program does not allow us time for that. But so we're going to spend the next 10 minutes talking a bit about his service, his public service. Of course, he was Governor General here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and there are also some non-profit organizations that he also supported as well. And so we just want to touch on that very briefly, but we're going to take a quick break. And so while we do that during the break, persons can, for those who may not be aware of what had took place, or those who was there and they can refresh their memory, we're going to show a clip of when he was sworn in as Governor General back on January 1st, it was in 2013. And so we'll take a break and we'll show that clip right now.
Oath of office. I, Edmund Wickham Lawrence,
I, Edmund Wickham Lawrence,
do swear
do swear
that I will honor,
uphold,
and preserve
and
the
preserve
Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis and the law,
the Constitution of St. Christopher and Nevis and the law,
and that I will conscientiously,
and that I will conscientiously,
impartially,
and
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge my duties as Governor General,
discharge my duties as Governor General,
and do right to all manner of people,
and do right to all manner of people,
without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
So help me God.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present formally to you the new Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Welcome back to InFocus. Our guest today is Mr. Ambassador Walford Gumbs and Mitchell Gumbs, and we're discussing the life and legacy of Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence, who, of course, passed away on September 7th, 2025. All right, gentlemen, so we just saw the clip of Sir Ed being sworn in as Governor General in St. Kitts and Nevis, of course. What did that mean to him to be coming from a teacher, as we mentioned, his first earlier life as a job, coming from a teacher to becoming the head of state of St. Kitts and Nevis? What did that mean to him?
I think that was a crowning moment for him. That was a crowning moment. From humble beginnings, a pupil teacher went off to study, do economics, came back and started what turned out to be the second largest bank in the OECS in terms of assets, and then to become the Governor General of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I think that was a crowning moment. And I was fortunate to be there. And so Ed spoke that evening, early morning, and something he said that touched me. He said, listen, I look across from Government House and there's this large Springfield Cemetery. And I know one day I'll join the others there. But I want my kindness to be remembered. I want people to remember me for my kindness, so that my children, okay, that kindness can be handed down to my children. Because when I'm in the grave, I can't do a thing to help my children from the grave. Yeah? And it held me, because there was a man saying this to me, I have done what I had to do. I have empowered several persons. I've helped institutions, I've helped organizations. But at some point, there's anything I can do. But my children, my legacy lives on. So be kind to my children. Okay, in a nutshell. And he was a very kind man. I can give you 2 examples. Okay, I could give you several, but we don't have the time. The former Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel Douglas, studying medicine in Jamaica in the 80s. He ended up in financial hard times. He called his brother Peter Douglas, who was a policeman in St. Kitts, and said, Peter, I am struggling, but go to National Bank and speak to Mr. Edmund Lawrence. Peter journeyed to Mr. Lawrence's office. Mr. Lawrence was a very good listener. He listened to him. And when Peter finished laying out the case for assistance, he said to him, it's okay, I will help, okay? The rest is history. I remember him and I having lunch up at Alfredo one Friday afternoon. He got a call. And then he said, okay, I'm here with Mitch, we're having lunch. So a couple showed up, husband and wife. And he pulled out his checkbook and he wrote a check for $10,000. He said, Mitch, they are having a hard time. They're having a challenge. And he just assists. So I can tell you, okay, I've experienced it, his kindness.
Yes, Mr. Lawrence Sir Edmund was a council member of the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park Society. He was a treasurer for not quite a number of years, and as a result of I being chairman of the bank, at one time I was placed on the council representing the business institutions. And today I'm still a member of the council in my own right, elected at the AGM of the council, right? As a result of working with Mr. Lawrence and being a part of the financial institution which he managed and steered. Right? And as was mentioned early on, that Mr. Lawrence was known throughout the Caribbean region, the banking institution, as Sir Ed, before he was even the Governor General and given the title by the Queen. People were calling, referring to him as Sir Ed. I go to a number of meetings and they would ask, how is Sir Ed? You know, that is how he was commonly called long before. So that I think Mitch is right. Being the Governor General, I think, was the crowning point of his life. And he gave you personal examples of of his vision, even when he was Governor General.
Right. And so, of course, as it relates to the positions as you touched on in terms of non-profit organizations, such as the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park, of course, he also was a Rotarian as well, too. And so those things,
Mount
even though
Olive
he
Lodge.
held that prominent position in St. Kitts and Nevis as Governor General, he still found time to help to contribute and also to, I would imagine, help to lend his name to, help to increase some of the patronage of Governor General's office to, make fundraising events and stuff more successful.
Yes. Quite true.
Another thing, well, at the bank, what he did, whenever the bank upgraded the IT and they changed out all the computers and stuff like that, he instructed the staff to go to a school, okay, and donate them to the school. So all the clock he wanted to ensure that you equip the children from an early age with the necessary tool to get the job done.
So my final question for both of you gentlemen, because we're just about 3 minutes left, is what do you think future generations should remember most about Sir Edmund's legacy? And Mitch, you touched on it earlier in terms of being kind to persons. So I'm gonna come back to you, give you another opportunity to reflect on the vast experience that you have with it, because that would have been a good closing sentence. So I'll give you an opportunity to expand your mind and find something else that you can add to it. But Ambassador, what do you think future generations should remember most about Sir Edmund Wickham Lawrence?
One, contribution to nation building, to his training in banking and economics, and what he has done with the St. Kitts Nevis and Anguilla National Bank. Good. His life is an example. He's a family man. We were bringing up 6 daughters, he and his wife. Is an example to the way they have blossomed out in the world of education, and some returned, to fill their roles in different fields within the country: finance, medicine, and music, so forth. And as I endorse what Mitch said, I have known personally of his benevolence to quite a number of ordinary persons who you will not hear anything about. Good, because he was not a man who would boast about anything. Very humble, very simple, and he do whatever he had to do privately, and that was it. And many people would remember him for that, his generosity, and how, because of his position and his role in the banking institution, have helped them to acquire some bit of the rock, property, and even in terms of education, sending their children to higher education and so forth.
All I can say is that the board of directors, in their wisdom, ensure before he passed on to the great beyond, his name is etched in the building, Edmund Wickham Lawrence building, and future generation and students of history would see the name and their research to find out who was this person. And the information is there. Volume of information is there. Tell you who he was. He was a visionary. He was par excellence. Okay? And so, because of him, we are better off financially today. The little people can now boast of growing their wealth. Okay? And my final thought on Mr. Lawrence is that Sir Ed is dead and gone. When comes such another? Okay?
Mitchell Gumbs, Ambassador Walford Gumbs, thank you so much for joining us for this edition of InFocus.
My pleasure.
We'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for being with us. Of course, Sir Edmund will be laid to rest tomorrow as we tape this on Wednesday live. He'll be laid to rest on Thursday, that will be on October 2nd. The state service will be at the Wesley Methodist Church. The service begins at 1 p.m. And so we'd like to thank you for joining us for this edition of InFocus, which was that you will join us next week at the same place, at the same time for another edition. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.